Okay, for my presentation, I'm going to do the Native American ghost dance. We learned about this briefly at the beginning of the class this year, but I'm going to go into more detail and give the most interesting things about this dance that I thought. So I chose this topic because Native American culture has always been so interesting to me because they were here before we were. And the fact that we don't learn enough about them is just appalling to me. But we all have to start somewhere. So we can start here. Um, the Native Americans truly felt this dance was a type of religion. And out of all the Native American dances that are out there, I believe this was the most powerful one. So, a little bit of history. It all started with a Masonic vision from a Western Paiute leader called Wavoka. He had it was a great vision that an earthquake was coming and it was going to hit the entire earth and take everyone with it that did not perform this dance. And it was going to create a new earth where prairies were abundant and buffalo were everywhere, and the Native Americans would live in peace, and their ancestors' ghosts would come back, and they would all live in harmony and no more suffering. And it was a type of salvation to them because if they performed this dance, then they were coming back. But Native Americans that didn't, they were going to be swallowed into this earthquake and die. So that is religion right there. So the Native American ghost dance is largely associated with the Battle of Wounded Knee. It was the bloodiest battle in U.S. history, and it happened because the U.S. government authorities they were so threatened by the ghost dance. They saw it as a power and a coming up resistance. Anybody who watched this felt uneasy because it just showed how powerful the Native Americans were at this time and how dear they held this cause to their heart. And this ultimately did lead to the Battle of Wounded Knee, which was where the 7th U.S. Cavalry wiped out an entire Sioux camp, including women and children. So this dance is a little bit different in the fact that it doesn't have a specific song or beat that it was danced to, but instead it was danced to Native Americans chanting in unison. And to me, this makes it seem even more powerful because they didn't need that. They just formed a circle and sang together and then danced with what they were feeling off of their own voices. So the costumes may be one of the most interesting parts about this. So the ghost shirts, while they weren't worn by all performers, they were worn by most, and they were definitely the most popular. They were handmade with hide or whatever they had available, and they put their own specific pictures and symbols that they picked out. So whatever they wanted, maybe stars, moon, birds, and they believed that these shirts would make them bulletproof. I mean, they believed they would not be able to die or a bullet could not hit them when they were wearing these shirts. And the sad part about this is they found it not to be true at the Battle of Wounded Knee. In my paper, I even included a quote, and one of the women shot in the Wounded Knee massacre was approached as she lay in church and told them that they must let her remove her ghost shirt in order to better get her wound. And she replied, "Yes, take it off. They told me a bullet would not go through. Now I don't want it anymore." The movements for the ghost dance, there was no formal training like some dances where you grow up and you learn this, but instead it was more felt with your heart. So the performers would formed a circle and held hands, and then that's when the chants would start. Then they would move in a clockwise direction while still holding hands. Then as the dance went on, they would each break off into their own and perform their own dances. And the ultimate goal of this was to end in a trance. And many times the trances led to people going crazy, losing control of their body, rolling around on the ground. And a lot of times people would have visions that went along with the primary vision of Wovoka. So this just gave the movement even more power. And it was just such a widely held belief. I mean, they truly felt this. They didn't just think it was crazy. They thought it was truly a form of religion, and these trances further confirmed their beliefs. And many outside viewers of the ghost dance saw it as a wild dance, and it scared them, and they just thought that the Native Americans were going crazy. I think that the culture influenced the dance rather than vice versa. And I think this because instead of just a dance, of course it was a dance, but it was a type of religion, like I mentioned before, it was their form of salvation. It Furthermore, the ghost dance also provided the Native Americans with a sense of hope and identity. The Native Americans were facing one of the darkest times of their lives, and this just gave them a want to keep on going.